Chapter 1607. Yi Hao sat on the dragon throne, and the hundreds of people in the hall knelt down and cheered. "Greetings, Your Majesty. May the Emperor live for 10,000 years. Rise, my beloved subjects." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Yi Hao scanned the people below the stage, and the pride in his heart grew stronger. He had contributed greatly to Tianyuan's current state. This is the first time Tianyuan has convened a meeting since the establishment of the United Empire. Everyone has worked hard. It's nothing. It's what we should do. That's right. It's all for the sake of Tianyuan's strength. On the other hand, Your Majesty has been working hard these days. You should pay more attention to your health. Yi Hao smiled and said, "This meeting is mainly to announce two things. First, the Qianshan treasure has recently surfaced, and many sacred dynasties have coveted it. Therefore, Tianyuan cannot let go of this opportunity. I plan to search for the treasure with the Confucian Saint King, the great Zhu Sacred King, and Jingguang." As soon as he said this, the people were in an uproar. In the ancient demon zone, where there were many strong enemies, if there were no Saint Kings, they would be eaten. Tianyuan only had 2 Saint Kings, and they were taken away by Yi Hao. Wouldn't it be very dangerous? Yi Hao raised his hand to signal for the people to be quiet. He smiled and said, "I know what you are worried about. This is also the second thing I want to say. The little dog on my shoulder is the sky-devouring Saint Beast. It is currently a Saint King of Spirits. With it in Tianyuan, nothing will happen." "What? This little dog is also a Saint King? Did I hear wrong? He is a Saint King of Spirits. Is he here to be funny? I don't believe it." Swallowing Sky, who was on Yi Hao's shoulder, leaped onto the table. With a low growl, the aura of a Saint King was completely revealed. Everyone below the stage fell silent, because the pressure that this little mutt brought was even greater than the combined pressure of the Saint Kings that day. Everyone below the stage was overjoyed. From the looks of it, their Tianyuan Empire was still very powerful. One had to know that only second-grade holy dynasties had Saint Kings. Unexpectedly, their newly promoted first-grade holy dynasty also had Saint Kings. Thinking of this, everyone's gaze once again turned to the young man on the dragon throne. This was all thanks to him. He was also secretly glad that he didn't follow the wrong person. The sky-devouring beast turned around and said indifferently, "Are you sure you don't need me to follow you this time?" "Don't worry," Yi Hao nodded and said, "with the Confucian Saint King, Zhu Yu, and Jingguang, nothing will happen." "Then be careful." The sky-devouring beast lay lazily on the table. Yi Hao nodded and said with a smile, "This is the last thing you promised me. You will be free after this." "Got it." The sky-devouring beast impatiently waved its claws and said, "I remember it all. I know it better than you. Do I need you to remind me?" Yi Hao smiled but didn't say anything. Then he said to the people in the hall, "After I leave, the matters of Tianyuan will be handled by Sanyang, Yi, Xin Xin, Qing Yunji, and Jin Sheng. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." The current Tianyuan wasn't the same Tianyuan as before. In the past, there weren't many things in Tianyuan, so Sanyang could handle everything by herself. Now, Tianyuan was stronger than before, and there were more things to do. Therefore, Yi Hao found a few helpers for Sanyang. Yi Hao said a few more words to the people, then he left the hall with the Confucian Saint King and the other 2. Sanyang and the officials stood at the door to see them off. The 3 girls said goodbye to Yi Hao one by one. Finally, the sky-devouring beast on Sanyang's shoulder said lazily, "Kid, don't die outside. If you die outside, no one will collect your corpse. Got it?" Yi Hao waved his hand with his back to the people, then the 4 of them turned into 4 streams of light and rushed out of Tianyuan. Yi Hao had already engraved the topographic map in his mind, so when the Confucian Saint King mentioned a place, Yi Hao took the 3 of them and rushed there directly, wanting to get the clue as soon as possible. After Yi Hao and the others left Tianyuan New City, 2 figures immediately flew out. One quietly followed behind Yi Hao, and the other went straight to the Cracker Wind Sacred Dynasty. Cracker Wind Sacred Dynasty, Fantasy City. In a wine shop, there were 4 foreigners sitting in a corner, whispering to each other. A young man in black held a wine glass in his hand and asked an elegant man, "Are you sure you buried the clue there?" The elegant man nodded firmly and said, "There's no way I'm wrong. My memory is very accurate." "Then it's a little tricky." A handsome young man in white robes with a sword at his waist said, "There are a lot of soldiers there. Although this is not the imperial city of the Cracker Wind Sacred Dynasty, it is still the second largest city in the Sacred Dynasty. Those people can't be underestimated. There might even be Saint Kings among them." A man in blue clothes with a bamboo hat beside him opened his mouth but didn't say anything. "Those people are not important. The important thing is that they might attract other people in the city. Then it will be troublesome," the young man in black said with some annoyance. These 4 people were Yi Hao and the others who came all the way from Tianyuan New City. Monk Golden Light was a little special, so Yi Hao specially ordered people to make a set of clothes for him to hide the golden light on his body. After the 4 of them came to Illusion City from Tianyuan New City, they wanted to look for clues, but they didn't expect there to be a mine in the place where they buried the clue. Now that the mine had become the private property of the Cracker Wind Sacred Dynasty, there were a lot of soldiers guarding it. It was very difficult for them to sneak in. The Confucian Saint King said over and over again, the illusory city was just a small town back then. I buried the clue in a mountain outside the city. Who knew that there was a mine there, and I didn't know that the illusory city would change so much 100 years later. Ju Yu knocked on the table and said, "It's useless to talk about this now. We should think about how to sneak in and get the clue." Yi Hao's face darkened and asked, "How long will it take for you two to defeat those people with your battle prowess?" "Young Emperor, do you want to use force?" Saint King said, "If there are no Saint Kings, it should be easy. I'm just afraid that there are Saint Kings inside and it will delay us." "That's right. Although we are both 9th level Spirit Saint Kings, if we run into them, it won't be easy to deal with them. Plus, we still need to find clues." Ju Yu expressed deep concern. Then he saw 4 cavalrymen outside the tavern rushing toward the mine. He had an idea and said, "Maybe we don't need to use force. We can just use our wits." Following that, Ju Yu and the other 3 stealthily followed the 4 galloping cavalrymen. 10 miles to the west of Illusion City, there was a huge mine. There were many rare resources in the mine. These resources were very important to the Cracker Wind Sacred Dynasty, which had fallen from a 2nd-rank sacred dynasty. Therefore, the ruler of the Cracker Wind Sacred Dynasty ordered a lot of soldiers to guard the mine. Therefore, there were 2 spiritual little Saint Kings in charge of this mine. Chapter 1608. Today, the people of the mine had received orders from above, saying that a group of envoys had come with an important mission, and that everyone should be ready to receive them. As a result, the 2 spirit little Saint King brought everyone from the mine to wait at the entrance of the camp. Not long after, 4 cavalrymen appeared. The leader was an unprepossessing young man, and beside him were a young man and a middle-aged man. Behind them, there seemed to be another person. However, this person was wearing blue clothes and a bamboo hat, so his appearance could not be seen. "Elder Yi, Elder Yu, the envoys are here." A spirit Heavenly Emperor Realm Cultivator came to the side of the 2 spirit little Saint King and whispered into their ears. Only then did the 2 old men open their eyes. Seeing the 4 cavalry approaching, they hurriedly went forward to welcome them. The old man with white hair on the left was Elder Yi, and the old man with a white beard on the right was Elder Yu. The 2 old men led the people behind them and said respectfully, "May I ask if you are the envoys from the Imperial City?" The 4 of them sat on their horses without any intention of dismounting. The young man in the lead took out a token from his bosom and threw it to the old man, saying, "These are the identity tokens of the 4 of us. Take a look." Elder Yi took the token and carefully examined it. Realizing that it was indeed the token of the Imperial City, he could not help but hurriedly return it. Elder Yu said respectfully, "We naturally do not dare to doubt the identities of the few envoys. We have already set up a welcoming banquet for the few envoys. Everyone can go to the camp and have a good rest." "No need." The young man got off his horse, and the rest also got off their horses. The young man smiled and said, "Our time is limited, and the mission given by the higher-ups is too heavy, so we need to go to the mine to complete the mission. I'll have to trouble the two elders to lead the way. So that's how it is. Of course, of course, of course, of course. The two elders smiled and let everyone do their jobs. Then, they led the four of them into the mine. Along the way, the two elders tried to find out what kind of mission the four of them were carrying out, but they were all rejected by the smiling young man who said, "It's a confidential matter, I can't tell you, I hope you can forgive me." Helpless, the two elders could only give up. According to the request of the four of them, they brought them to the deepest part of the mine. The space in the mine was huge and filled with light. Elder Yi introduced, "Currently, only 1/10 of this vein has been developed. This is the deepest part at the moment. Well, you may leave." The young man waved his hand, indicating for the two elders to leave. The two elders were stunned for a moment, then hurriedly left. Actually, with the two elders' strength, there was no need for them to be so respectful to these few Spirit Heaven Emperor realm cultivators. It was just that they came from the critical imperial city and were the trusted aides of the ruler. If the two of them wanted to leave this godforsaken place and return to the imperial city, they would need the authority to speak for them. Coincidentally, these people could put in a few good words for them in front of the authority, so they lowered their stance. "By the way, can I trouble the two of you to ask all the workers to go out and wait at the door? No one is allowed to come in without our permission." The young man smiled. "What?" Elder Yu was shocked when he heard this, and said, "If all of them go out, wouldn't production stop?" "That's right. The mission requires it." The young man smiled. Elder Yi hurriedly pulled back the hot-tempered Elder Yu and said with a smile, "No problem, no problem. It's just that Lord Envoy, seeing how cooperative we are with your work, can you?" The young man instantly understood and laughed out loud. "No problem, I will definitely put in a few good words for you too. All right, then we won't disturb the mission of the emissaries. We'll go out now." With that, old Jiyu pulled Elder Yu and left the mine. Before leaving, he even took away all the workers. At this moment, only the 4 emissaries were left in the mine. "Phew, I almost suffocated to death." The refined man opened his mouth and said, "Ju Gongjin, you're really something." The young man who was Juyu smiled slightly. Fortunately, we managed to sneak in successfully. All right, now that we're in, it's up to you now, Confucian Saint King." Yi Hao patted the knight armor on his body and looked at the refined man with a smile. The golden light monk was still dressed the same way. This was also Ju Yu's suggestion. At that time, after they left the tavern, they followed behind the 4 knights and found a place where no one was around. They knocked the 4 out and changed into their clothes before coming here. Yi Hao and the other 2 changed into the knight's clothes, but the golden light monk did not change. It was said that they were deliberately mystifying to make the people in the mine completely believe that they were some mysterious figures who came with a mission. Now it seemed that the effect was obvious. Along the way, the 2 old men in the Saint King realm kept their eyes on the golden light monk, but they did not dare to speak, for fear that he was some big shot and they would accidentally offend him. The Confucian Saint King had buried the clue underground. At that time, the mine had not been fully developed and was just a small cave. The Confucian Saint King had already determined the approximate location when he first came in, so at this moment, he went straight to that location. At this time, Elder Yi and Elder Yu were standing near the exit of the mine and chatting. Elder Yi looked back at the mine and could not help but laugh. "Old Yu, it won't be long before the 2 of us can return to the imperial city." "Are you so sure?" Elder Yu asked. "Of course, that emissary promised it himself. I still feel a little uneasy. We don't even know what they do. What if something happens?" Elder Yi smiled and said, "That won't happen. The token has already been confirmed, so how can it be fake? Besides, didn't you see that person wearing blue clothes and a bamboo hat? One look and you can tell that his identity is not ordinary. If we offend him, we probably won't be able to return for the rest of our lives." "That's true." Elder Yu nodded. Then, the 2 of them did not think too much about it and continued chatting. Suddenly, a loud noise came from not far away. Elder Yi frowned and asked a soldier who was rushing towards that place, "What's going on? Why is it so noisy?" Elder Yi, I've finally found you. Something bad has happened. There are 4 topless Spirit Heaven Emperor cultivators at the entrance. They said that they are emissaries sent by the higher-ups and want to see you and Elder Yu. Emissary? Elder Yu said angrily, bullshit emissary. The emissary has already entered. These 4 bastards must be imposters. Tell them to scram back to where they came from. But those 4 emissaries said your names and said that they wanted to see you. Elder Yi reached out his hand to stop the furious Elder Yu and said with a serious expression, there's no harm in meeting them. Elder Yu looked at Elder Yi's serious expression and had a bad premonition in his heart. Elder Yi whispered something to the soldier and left with Elder Yu. Then, the soldier called all the soldiers in the camp over. Everyone stood at the entrance of the mine and blocked the exit. Chapter 1609. When the 2 elders arrived at the entrance of the camp, they saw 4 topless young men cursing at the guards at the entrance. Perhaps because the aura of these young men was too strong, none of the guards dared to talk back. When they saw the 2 elders, they stood behind them as if they had seen their saviors. The 2 elders looked at the 4 rude young men and frowned. Who are you? How dare you behave so atrociously at the entrance of our camp? Yi Sheng, Yu Ming, you 2 old farts have finally come out. Let me ask you, did 4 people go in wearing our critical realm's armor? Those 4 people are fake envoys. We are the real ones. They knocked us out and disguised as us to sneak in. Bullshit. Elder Yu was furious when he heard someone call him an old fart. He pointed at the 4 people and said, you said they are fake. They have a token to prove it. What do you have? That token was originally ours, but it was snatched away by them, you stupid pig. Try scolding us again. The 2 groups of people instantly quarreled and looked like they were going to fight. Enough. Elder Yi and the young man who had been standing behind the 4 people shouted together. What do you have to prove your identity? Elder Yi said loudly. Yi Sheng, Yu Ming, do you still recognize me? Then, a good-looking man with red lips and white teeth stood in front of the 4 people. He was the young master of a big family. He didn't want to show his face because his topless appearance would only bring shame to his family. But now, he had to stand up. The 2 elders looked at the familiar figure and hurriedly knelt and shouted, Greetings, 4th young master. 4th young master nodded and said, Do you believe our identity now? Of course I do. Men, bring 4 brocade clothes. The 4th young master and the others slowly put on their embroidered robes and questioned, You 2 old things, you've delayed this young master's important matter. Do you know that if those 4 little thieves had escaped, you'd be dead for sure? The 2 elders fell to the ground and trembled. Fortunately, Elder Yi was prepared and hurriedly said, 4th young master, don't worry. I have already ordered people to guard the entrance. Those 4 thieves won't be able to escape. 4th young master coldly snorted and said, Lead the way. Thus, the group of people walked towards the mine in a grandiose manner. In the mine, the Confucian Saint King who had dug 3 feet into the ground finally dug out a brocade box. Inside the brocade box was a corner of the map. With the map in hand, the 4 of them looked at each other and prepared to leave. Suddenly, a burst of noise came from the cave entrance. Taking a closer look, he saw that there were many guards standing at the entrance of the cave. Yi Hao signaled everyone not to act rashly. He walked to the entrance of the cave and shouted, What are you standing here for? Get out of the way. One of the stage 9 Spirit Emperor cultivators cupped his hands and said, I'm sorry, Lord Envoys. Without Elder Yi's orders, we will not leave. Do you know what you're doing? Rebel my ass, you bastard. Suddenly, a strong voice came from afar. Then, an old man with a white beard appeared in front of Yi Hao. He gathered his spiritual energy and punched out. Young Emperor, be careful. Ju Yu shouted and blocked in front of Yi Hao. At the same time, he punched out. The 2 fists collided. Ju Yu did not move at all, but Elder Yu who rushed over took a few steps back. Elder Yu looked at his red fist and said with a sinister expression, What a 9th stage spiritual Saint King. I really misjudged you before. Old thing, stop them for me. You can't let them escape. After a young voice sounded, Elder Yi appeared at the entrance of the cave with many guards. He stared at Yi Hao and the other three like a tiger eyeing its prey. Elder Yi moved his wrist and said coldly, "You guys really have good acting skills. You actually lied to me for so long." Ju Yu looked at the four people who were approaching from afar and said with a puzzled expression, "It can't be. How could they wake up so quickly? Could it be that someone helped them? Who cares?" The Confucian Saint King shouted and threw away the heavy armor on his body. He said loudly, "Since we've been exposed, then let's not pretend anymore. We'll just kill our way out." The golden light monk shone brightly. It was obvious that he was prepared to fight. Yi Hao also threw away the armor on his body and said with a smile, "Since we've already gotten the item, let's just kill our way out." "All right." Ju Yu shouted, pulled out the sword in his hand, and said, "Leave those two Saint Kings to us. You guys go first, we'll cover the rear." Elder Yi and Elder Yu's faces were extremely gloomy. They hated the people in front of them and shouted at the same time, "Kill!" Ju Yu and the Confucian Saint King took the lead and killed their way out. Those Spirit Heaven Emperor realm cultivators were no match for them at all. They directly killed their way out, and Yi Hao and the other two hurriedly followed behind. Seeing this, the two elders each took on a Saint King. Yi Hao and the others' forward momentum instantly stopped. At this time, the fourth young master's group of four also arrived nearby. The fourth young master looked at the four of them and realized that Yi Hao's cultivation was the lowest, only at the 8th order Spirit Heaven Emperor. He couldn't help but sneer and gather his spirit energy to attack Yi Hao. "Little thief, you actually dare to hit this young master. Go to hell." At this time, Yi Hao had already been possessed by the stars, and his fighting strength was unrivaled. Facing the surrounding enemies, no one was his match with a single slap. Suddenly, a young figure rushed to Yi Hao's side and shouted at Yi Hao. Yi Hao did not hear what he said clearly, but this did not stop him from sending the arrogant fourth young master of the 9th order Spirit Heaven Emperor flying with a single slap. Smoke and dust billowed as the fourth young master continued to bleed. When the other three saw this, they also rushed forward. In the end, Yi Hao slapped out, causing the three of them to bleed. One of them could not withstand Yi Hao's boundless spirit energy and exploded to death. Yi Hao, who possessed the star and moon transformation, had strength that was close to the first stage of the Spirit Saint King. How could these Spirit Heaven Emperor realm cultivators compare to him? Monk Jin Guang, who was not far away, did not show any mercy. Golden light shone brightly as spirit energy surged, quickly leaving a large empty space. The surrounding Spirit Heaven Emperor cultivators no longer dared to be careless. For a moment, they were actually afraid and did not dare to step forward. Just as everyone was hesitating, Yi Hao and Monk Jin Guang had already turned into two streaks of light and rushed into the distance. A voice came from afar, "The wind is tight, let's go." Ju Yuru, who was in the midst of a great battle, immediately understood and forced the person in front of him to retreat. Elder Yu was about to give chase, but Elder Yi waved his hand. "There's no need to chase. It's useless even if we catch up. Those two haven't used their full strength yet. Otherwise, with our 7th order Spirit Saint King, we would have been gone long ago. Then we're going to let them run away just like that." Elder Yu was unwilling. Elder Yi sighed and said, "Report today's matter to the higher-ups." "Oh right, go and see if there are any losses in the mine." After that, Elder Yi ordered his men to carry the heavily injured fourth young master and the others back to the camp. Elder Yu angrily brought everyone into the cave to check. Fortunately, nothing was lost, otherwise, their lives would be in danger. Chapter 16:10. There was an unknown river in the ancient demon domain. Suddenly, a man appeared in the middle of the river. He was dressed in white and had a cold expression. He was holding a brocade box in his hand. He looked happy as he took a step forward and came to the shore. Spiritual energy flowed around his body, drying his wet clothes and white hair. There were 3 other figures on the shore. One of them, a young man in black, smiled and asked, "Are you a gopher? Do you like to dig holes so much? And buried in the river?" The Confucian Saint King scratched his head and said awkwardly, "100 years have passed. The landscape has changed a lot. There was no river here at that time. Ju Yu looked at the brocade box in the Confucian Saint King's hand and said with a smile, "This is the third clue. There's one more, and your 1/3 of the clues should be gathered." Speaking of this, the Confucian Saint King secretly glanced behind him and deliberately said loudly, "Yes, there's one last clue. Let's not delay. Let's go." Yi Hao casually glanced behind the Confucian Saint King, then led the three of them to the last destination. Just after the four of them left, a figure quietly appeared. It was an old man with a walking stick. He looked at the blurry figures of the four and muttered to himself, "Only one last clue left. Then I should inform the second Saint King to reel in the net." After Yi Hao and the other three left the critical sacred dynasty, they searched everywhere for clues. Half a month had passed, and they had found 3 clues. Now, they were rushing toward the 4th clue. This time, the clue was not buried in the ground, but in the hands of a person. After spending 3 days, Yi Hao and the other 3 came to a county in the Wind Sacred Dynasty. The Confucian Saint King went to the home of the person who had entrusted him with the clue based on his memory, only to find that the house had long been ruined. It was overgrown with weeds, and the family was nowhere to be found. Ju Yu spent a lot of effort to find out that the family had made a fortune many years ago and had moved to a big city. After finding out the location of the city, the 4 of them went straight to the city. 3rd grade Sacred Dynasty, Sunset Sacred Dynasty. There was an old man sitting cross-legged in a secret chamber in the imperial palace. Suddenly, the door to the secret chamber was opened, and a short middle-aged man in yellow clothes walked in. The man came to the secret chamber and habitually sat on another futon. The middle-aged man looked at the old man beside him and said slowly, "After so many years, you're finally willing to come back." The old man suddenly opened his eyes and said leisurely, "What should be done has been done. If you don't come back, what are you still doing there? You want to use him to deal with the ancient fallen dynasty? Yes. Is your hatred for the ancient fallen holy dynasty so deep? Absolutely irreconcilable." The middle-aged man chuckled and said, "Up to you. However, I'm here to ask you to help me with something." "What is it?" "The higher-ups asked me to get rid of him, but it's not convenient for me to do it. After thinking about it, I can only leave it to you." The old man's pupils shrank and he didn't say anything for a long time. The middle-aged man's eyes gradually sharpened as he shouted, "What? You're not willing? Don't forget who helped you make a comeback. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be who you are today, and the Sunset Dynasty wouldn't exist." The old man's lips moved, but he said helplessly, "I can agree, but I have a condition." "Ha, you actually dare to negotiate with me? You're quite bold." The middle-aged man sneered even more coldly. The old man didn't care at all and said, "After this is done, when I go to the desolate world in the future, you have to let your faction protect me." "Do you really want to go to the desolate world that much? That's not a good place. What's so special about the ancient demon realm?" "All right, I promise you," the middle-aged man agreed with a smile. The old man said expressionlessly, "Leave that matter to me. I hope you won't disappoint me." The middle-aged man chuckled and was about to leave when he suddenly thought of something and asked, "By the way, what's the matter with the Qianshan treasure?" The old man smiled and said, "That's my business. You don't have to worry about it." "All right, as you wish." After saying that, the middle-aged man left the secret room. Not long after, a young man wearing a bright yellow dragon robe with stubble walked in. When he saw the old man sitting cross-legged on the futon, he immediately knelt on the ground. "Godfather, you're finally back." The old man smiled and waved at the young man, saying, "I haven't been back for so many years. How have you been?" "Good, everything is good. With Godfather's support, the Sunset Dynasty is thriving. Its strength is one of the best among the 3rd-grade holy dynasties." "That's good." The old man laughed and said, "By the way, has there been any movement in the Qianshan treasure recently?" Replying to foster father, rumors have been spreading in the ancient demon domain recently. It is said that the Confucian Saint King has returned to the ancient demon domain and will open the famous Qianshan treasure trove together with the quasi-sage king. Many people from large forces have gone to join in the fun. "What should we do? Has the ancient fallen dynasty gone? As far as I know, no. Heh, that's good. The old man sneered and said, the Qianshan treasure has been famous for 100 years. It's time for it to appear. After all, I've been planning for 100 years. The young man was shocked when he heard that. The Qianshan treasure was his godfather's work? And he had been planning for 100 years. What was he planning? The old man took in the young man's small movements and expressions. He smiled and said, you don't have to know why I'm doing this. Just do as I say. Yes, godfather. The old man then told his plan to the most respected person in the Sunset Dynasty. The leader of the Sunset Holy Dynasty had a grave expression on his face when he heard that. Then, he retreated to make plans. In the ancient fallen dynasty, a third-grade holy dynasty. In the main hall of the imperial palace, an old man was sitting peacefully on the dragon throne. His eyes were slightly closed as if he was about to fall asleep. There were two people kneeling in the hall, a middle-aged man and a young man. Both of them were in a sorry state. There were many wounds on their bodies and their faces were yellow. It seemed like they had been starving for many days. The middle-aged man looked at the old man who was about to fall asleep on the dragon throne and said, Your Majesty, this is what happened. It was Yi Hao who brought people to destroy our Kangou Empire and White God Empire. He even brought Tian Yuan and ascended to the ancient demon realm. Hearing that, the old man slowly opened his eyes and said impatiently, if they're destroyed, then so be it. Those two empires were just pawns that I used to monitor Ji Yusheng. Now that Ji Yusheng is dead, there's no need for that anymore. As for that Yi Hao you mentioned, if he ascends, then so be it. He's just a first-grade holy dynasty, what can he do? Chapter 16:11. The two people kneeling in the main hall were the Kangou Empire's imperial uncle and his son who had escaped from the Lin clan's ancestor. After the two of them had escaped from the Lin clan's ancestor, they had traveled all the way to the upper ancient demon realm. They then went to the ancient Luo holy dynasty to inform them of what had happened. They wanted to use the ancient Luo holy dynasty's power to take revenge. However, the ancient Luo holy dynasty did not care about their lives at all. Imperial Uncle Kang's eyes kept darting around. Suddenly, he said, Your Majesty, Tianyuan is a first-grade holy dynasty. However, it has only taken them a few years to grow from a first-grade empire to a first-grade holy dynasty. If we don't get rid of them now, it will be too late when they grow stronger. Hey, you're saying that he'll ascend in a few years? That's right. He's a huge threat. The old man seemed to be interested. He smiled and said, if that's the case, we can recruit him. He has such great potential. It would be a pity if we don't use him properly. Imperial Uncle Kang was anxious when he saw that the situation was developing in the opposite direction from what he had expected. At that moment, Kang Ju, who was beside him, said, Your Majesty, I know that you love talents. However, you can't use this person. Oh, why is that? Because when he was in the lower realm, he had already taken Ji Yusheng as his master. If I'm not wrong, he must be hostile towards the ancient Luo holy dynasty. The old man's smiling face suddenly stiffened. Then, it turned dark. Kang Ju continued, Yi Hao wants to take advantage of the fact that you don't know that he's Ji Yusheng's disciple. When he's strong enough to fight against us, he will not hesitate to attack the ancient Luo holy dynasty to avenge his dead master. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Bang! The old man slammed his hand on the gold table in front of him. Boom! The gold table shattered into pieces. The two people who saw this had cold sweat dripping down their backs. They sighed, even a gold table can't take a full blow from a holy king. Gu. Before he could finish speaking, a middle-aged man in black armor with a grave and stern expression walked in. The middle-aged man knelt on one knee and said, As your Majesty command. Take all your men and destroy the Tianyuan sacred dynasty. The middle-aged man was stunned for a moment before he said, Your Majesty, as far as I know, the Tianyuan sacred dynasty is only a first-grade sacred dynasty. Even if they have a saint king, it's only a spiritual saint king. Isn't it a little? This Yi Hao is that person's disciple. This time, I won't be merciful. I won't let him live. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. Do you understand? Gu Yu's body trembled when he heard the words that person. Then, he said in a deep voice, "Yes, Your Majesty. I will not let you down. Take those two with you. They know something." "Yes, thank you, Your Majesty." "Thank you, General." In the end, the ancient fallen holy dynasty sent out a team of 10,000 people. The leader was a spirit saint king, and the soldiers were all high-level spirit heavenly emperors. There were also a few generals who were spirit saint kings. After the team left the ancient fallen holy dynasty, they went straight to the Tianyuan sacred dynasty, which was located at the edge of the ancient demon domain. The news of the ancient fallen holy dynasty sending out troops quickly spread throughout the ancient demon domain. Everyone was guessing which unlucky bastard had offended the number one faction among the third-grade sacred dynasties. At this moment, Yi Hao and the others in the Chengfeng sacred dynasty's Devil World City did not know that the ancient fallen holy dynasty had sent troops to the Tianyuan sacred dynasty. They were still looking for the last clue. The family who had suddenly made a fortune had moved from a small county to the Devil World City. They owned many properties in the Devil World City. Because the family was famous in the Devil World City, it was easy for them to find the mansion they were living in. The Confucian Saint King looked at the bronze door and knocked on it gently. He asked, "Is this the Feng family's residence?" Not long after, a person who looked like a guard poked his head out and asked, "This is the Feng family's residence. Who are you?" The Confucian Saint King smiled and said, "I am a Confucian scholar. 100 years ago, I left something in the Feng family's residence. I am here to retrieve it." "What are you talking about? Are you crazy? Hurry up and get lost." Hearing this, the guard's expression suddenly became somewhat flustered as he cursed loudly. Then, he closed the door with a clang. The Confucian Saint King was furious. What kind of attitude was that? How dare a guard be so arrogant? Ju Yu thought about the guard's actions and expression and said, "Maybe there is a reason for this." "What do you mean?" Yi Hao and the others looked at Ju Yu at the same time. Ju Yu's hearing was very good. He heard some panicked footsteps behind the bronze door and said, "He is here. We will know soon." The bronze door opened and a middle-aged man with a well-built body walked out. He cupped his hands and said, "I am the current patriarch of the Feng family, Feng Sheng. May I ask which one of you is the Confucian scholar?" "I am." The Confucian Saint King protected his name. "Oh, so you are." Feng Sheng swallowed his saliva. He was nervous and cold sweat was dripping down his forehead. Ju Yu suddenly stepped forward and joked, "Patriarch Feng, the weather is not that hot, is it?" Feng Sheng wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and hurriedly explained, "I have been weak and sickly since I was young. My body is weak. Please forgive me." Then, Feng Sheng changed the topic and said, "Confucian scholar, you did leave something in my house. However, you gave it to my grandfather. After my grandfather died, he passed it to my father, and my father passed it to me. Now, I will return it to you. Come with me." After saying that, Feng Sheng led the group of guards into the mansion. The Confucian Saint King was about to step in when Ju Yu stopped him. Ju Yu transmitted his voice to the others, "This Feng Sheng looks strange. Everyone, be careful. Also, the strength of these guards is not simple. Don't be careless." "Okay." After everyone agreed, the four of them followed Feng Sheng side by side. The courtyard of the Feng family was very big. They walked for a while before they arrived at the hall. There was a brocade box on the table in the hall. This brocade box was the same as the one found by Yi Hao and the others. The Confucian Saint King could not help but be happy. It seemed that this family kept their promise. Back then, the Confucian Saint King had inadvertently saved the life of Feng Sheng's grandfather. In order to repay the kindness, his grandfather had to do something for the Confucian Saint King to repay this great kindness. The Confucian Saint King could not refuse, so he gave the last clue to Feng Sheng's grandfather, saying that he would come and get it later. Who would have thought that it would be 100 years? Feng Sheng's grandfather and father did not see the owner of the brocade box until they died. Fortunately, in Feng Sheng's generation, The owner of the brocade box finally came. Feng Sheng could finally return it to its rightful owner. N. Chapter 1612. In the hall, Feng Sheng took the brocade box and held it in his hand. His body trembled slightly, perhaps because of excitement or something else. It's been 100 years. The Feng family has been guarding this thing for 100 years. Today, it can finally be returned to its rightful owner. As he spoke, 2 lines of tears appeared on Feng Sheng's face. The Confucian Saint King also felt guilty. He did not expect that his casual words would cost the family 100 years. Then, he took out a piece of warm jade and handed it to Feng Sheng. I'm sorry. I've been trapped somewhere for 100 years and have no way to take this thing away. Keep this warm jade to nourish your body. If you have any difficulties in the future, you can use this warm jade to find me in the Tianyuan sacred dynasty. I owe the Feng family a big favor. Feng Sheng accepted the warm jade with tears in his eyes and handed the brocade box to the Confucian Saint King. He said, "No, you don't owe us anything. This is what my grandfather promised you. It's also what the Feng family should do." The Confucian Saint King's mouth was a little bitter. He did not say anything and put his hand on the brocade box. At this time, Ju Yu noticed that Feng Sheng's body was trembling. His black pupils were filled with fear. He could not help but wonder, this is not excitement, this is fear. Why is he afraid? Then, he found that Feng Sheng's eyes were fixed on the brocade box in the Confucian Saint King's hand. He could not help but have a bad feeling. He exclaimed, "No, don't open it." Unfortunately, it was too late. The Confucian Saint King had already opened the black brocade box. There was nothing inside. Something was wrong. A black cloud suddenly ran out of the brocade box. Feng Sheng looked at the black cloud and screamed in horror. He ran away, but unfortunately, he only took 2 steps before his body was pierced by a crutch. Finally, he lay powerlessly on the ground. Yi Hao and the others did not have time to observe this sudden scene. The black cloud split into 4 forces and went straight into their bodies. Then, they felt that they had lost their sense of spiritual power. They were shocked. The Confucian Saint King looked at his hands with an ugly expression. He could not use any spiritual power. He already knew what the black cloud was. It was the unique qi of the Xiefeng sacred dynasty that could temporarily block people's perception of the surrounding spiritual power. Since this thing appeared here, that guy must be here. Sure enough, after Ghost Saint King retrieved his walking stick from Feng Sheng's corpse, he stood respectfully to the side. Then, a man and a woman appeared in front of Ghost Saint King. The man wore a blue dragon robe while the woman wore a red phoenix dress. When the 2 of them stood together, they gave off a feeling of being the ruler of the world and the mother of the world. They were indeed the emperor and empress. The one in the blue dragon robe was the ruler of the Shuefeng holy dynasty, the 2nd Saint King, and the one in the red phoenix dress was the Lin Yi Saintess, the empress of the Shuefeng holy dynasty. The Confucian Saint King looked at the 2 familiar figures, and his eyes turned red. No one knew if it was because of the joy or sadness after the reunion. "Elder brother, long time no see." Quasi-Sage King hugged the Lin Yi Saintess' slender waist and said with a smile. The Saintess of Lin Yi stared expressionlessly at the man who had lost all of his spiritual power. He had once loved her and wanted to be with her for the rest of his life. The Confucian Saint King felt bitter in his heart, and he could not say anything. One was his most beloved younger brother, and the other was his most beloved woman. He never expected that when they met again, they would become partners. One was the emperor, and the other was the empress. What about him? He was nothing. I didn't expect that we would meet again under such circumstances. The Confucian Saint King took a deep breath and said, "I have nothing to say. Just give me back my things." Ha ha ha. Quasi-Sage King laughed mockingly and said, "Elder brother, how does it feel to see your woman in the arms of your younger brother?" The Confucian Saint King said expressionlessly, "It's my own fault for falling to this point. I don't blame anyone. Lin Yi has the right to pursue her own happiness. Since I'm not here, you should be the emperor of the Shuefeng holy dynasty. There's nothing to say. I've thought it through. I just want to take back my things. Yi Hao and the others had some guesses about the identity of the man and woman, but when they heard the conversation between the two, they could not help but feel a little shocked. Quasi-Sage King sneered and said in a deep voice, "Yes, it's your fault. It's all your fault. Since Imperial Father and Imperial Mother gave birth to you, why did they give birth to me? Did they want me to see your prowess? Did they want to see how powerful you are? Seeing that you've already stepped into the Saint King realm at such a young age, are you going to lead the Shuefeng Holy Dynasty into a third-grade Holy Dynasty? When we were young, you fought with me for everything. Imperial Father and Imperial Mother's love, high-grade cultivation methods, spiritual weapons, and even the woman I liked. You wanted to fight with me for everything. Your birth was a mistake. You shouldn't have come to this world. Aren't you the pride of Imperial Father and Imperial Mother? But look at you now, 9th level little Saint King. It's been 100 years, and you're still at this level. What kind of pride are you? You're just a piece of trash, a complete piece of trash. Hey, no matter what, he's still your elder brother. Aren't you going too far by saying that?" Yi Hao could not help but interrupt when he heard Quasi-Sage King's extremely unpleasant words. Bang! Quasi-Sage King raised his fist and punched Yi Hao in the abdomen. Then, Yi Hao crashed into the wall of the courtyard like a cannonball. "I'm talking to my useless elder brother. What does it have to do with you? You." Ju Yu was furious and was punched as well. Quasi-Sage King, who was still angry, also punched Monk Golden Light. The three of them were lying on the ground neatly. "Stop it. Who allowed you to touch them? Come at me if you have anything." The Confucian Saint King grabbed Quasi-Sage King's arm and roared angrily. Quasi-Sage King sneered and swung his right hand, sending the Confucian Saint King flying. Quasi-Sage King patted his sleeves in disdain and said impatiently, "Come at you? With your current appearance? Can you take it?" The Confucian Saint King crawled out of the rubble with great difficulty. His gaze did not waver. At this moment, Ghost Sage King suddenly appeared in front of him and pressed him against the wall. Then, he found the remaining 3 clues from the Confucian Saint King's clothes. The Confucian Saint King knelt on one knee and said calmly, "Did you buy the last clue many years ago? You're not that stupid." The second Saint King chuckled and said, "That's right. Many years ago, I indeed bought that last clue. The reason why I bought it was because I knew that you would definitely come back to look for it after returning. Otherwise, how do you think the Feng clan became rich overnight? So, you've already arranged everything and waited for me to come back." "Yes. But the Feng family is innocent. Why did you kill them?" The Confucian Saint King stood up with a trace of anger in his eyes. Chapter 16:13. Innocent. The Quasi-Saint King smiled and said, "No one in this world is innocent, not to mention that they are related to you. Do you hate me that much?" "Yes, I hate you very much. I can't wait for you to die." "Saint King, the clues are all here. It's a map." The Ghost Saint King pieced the map together, his hands trembling slightly. He was very excited. The incomplete map was finally complete, which also meant that they would soon know the location of the Qianshan treasure. After the map was pieced together, the shadow of a red palace suddenly appeared on top of the map. The Quasi-Saint King looked at the red building and felt that it was a little familiar. Not only him, but the Ghost Saint King also felt that it was a little familiar, but he could not remember where he had seen it before. "This is the ruins of the Sunset Dynasty." The Saintess of Lini quietly approached and said. After hearing what the Saintess said, the two of them suddenly recalled that there was indeed such a ruin in the Sunset Dynasty, and there was a building standing in that ruin, and it just so happened to be the one in front of them. The Ghost Saint King put away the map and whispered, "Saint King, do you want these people?" The Quasi-Saint King shook his head slightly and sneered, "Take them with you. It's not bad to use them to explore the way. Besides, I haven't played enough." "Yes." Then, a group of black-clothed people with masks on their foreheads walked out. Upon closer inspection, these people were actually all in the Saint King realm, and there were quite a number of them. There were as many as 10 of them. Yi Hao and the others had temporarily lost their spiritual power, so they could only be taken away by the quasi-saint king and the others. The Sunset Dynasty, the ruins. There used to be a majestic city here, but many years ago, after being ravaged by the flames of war, the majestic city collapsed and became a dilapidated city. Because of the war, many corpses were buried under the ruins. After a long time, the corpses smelled, causing the surrounding people to not dare to come close. No one lived here, and no one came close. Over time, it became a ruin. If there was something different about this ruin, it would be the red building that was exposed after the city was destroyed. It had been a few decades, but not only had the building not deteriorated, it had become even more lively. Often at night, it would reveal a bewitching red light. If it wasn't for the fact that there was no one living nearby, this phenomenon would have been spread out a long time ago, attracting people from all the major forces to come and see it. Today, this red building, which had been peaceful for decades, welcomed a group of uninvited guests. The tranquility of the ruins would eventually be broken. A team of more than a dozen people arrived at the Sunset Dynasty and stood in front of the red building. The leader took off his cloak, revealing his cold face. He looked at the tightly locked red door and wondered, it's been so long since the war. It's fine if this building hasn't collapsed, but there's not even a speck of dust. It feels like it was just built. Yes. An old man with a walking stick said, I feel that this thing is not ordinary. It seems that the Chenshan treasure is very likely inside. Let's go in and see if it's inside. A woman in a red phoenix dress said expressionlessly as she looked at the red building that was as big as a small hill. Yes, good idea. The second sage king threw away his black cloak and clapped his hands. Immediately, 8 Saint King realm cultivators escorted Yi Hao and the other 3 forward. Let them go. The second sage king waved his hand indifferently. With his cultivation of the Spirit Saint King, how could he be afraid of these 2 9th-level Spirit Saint King and Spirit Heaven Emperor cultivators? Yi Hao and the other 3 were just about to stretch their muscles when a vast pressure came toward them. Their hearts suddenly sank. This was the pressure of the Spirit Saint King. The Confucian Saint King gritted his teeth and said word by word, "What do you mean by this?" "Oh, it seems that you guys have recovered well along the way. All your spiritual power has been restored. Otherwise, how could you not kneel in the face of the Spirit Saint King's pressure?" After saying that, he snorted coldly and his whole person became more powerful. Plop. The Confucian Saint King couldn't stand it anymore. His right leg suddenly bent and he knelt on one knee. Monk Golden Light glared and was about to rush forward when the second Sage King pressed his hand down. The 4 of them felt as if the sky was covered, and then they all knelt on one knee. Insult. It was a blatant insult. Second Sage, that's enough. The Confucian Saint King roared. Unexpectedly, the Saintess of Linyi waved her sleeve and the 4 of them flew straight toward the red door. Noisy, cannon fodder should have the awareness of cannon fodder. The Saintess of Linyi's face was cold as she said lightly, "Find a way to open that red door, or die." Cough, cough. Yi Hao gently covered his chest and said, "Why is this woman so fierce?" Ju Yu also said gloomily, "Confucian Saint King, so this is your type." The Confucian Saint King shook his head slightly and said calmly, "No, she was not like this before." Monk Golden Light shook his dizzy head and clenched his fists. Yi Hao pulled him and then he put down his shining golden fists. The 4 of them turned together and began to look at the red door in front of them. Is the Chenshan treasure hidden inside? Yi Hao used all his strength but still could not open the door. He could not help but wonder. According to the mark on the map, it should be here. Ju Yu also looked carefully, as if thinking about how to open the door. The Confucian Saint King also stared at the red door and studied it carefully. Monk Golden Light did not speak, but his pair of golden eyes kept glancing at the door. The Ghost Saint King looked at this scene with a trace of doubt and said, "Why do the 4 of them look so calm and composed? Shouldn't they be panicking?" "Then you underestimate that guy too much. He is someone who will not panic even if Mount Tai collapses in front of him. Otherwise, back then, he would not have." The Saintess of Linyi's face became uglier as she spoke. "Ha ha." The second Sage King sneered and said confidently, "No matter what the reason is, We have 2 spiritual saint kings and 11 spiritual saint kings. Unless a spiritual saint king comes in person, no one can save them. Second sage king, you want to take all the benefits for yourself. That's right. You know the clue to the Qianshan treasure and you don't want to share it with us. Although your Qiufeng sacred dynasty is a second-grade sacred dynasty, you really can't take all the treasures. Suddenly, there was a burst of noise around, and then a dozen figures walked out. The second sage king's face suddenly turned pale. He turned around and looked at the greedy eyes of the dozen people, who were smiling more and more widely. He asked, "How did you find this place? We are very careful about our whereabouts, and it is impossible for us to be exposed. As for leaking the secret, it is even more impossible." One of them took off his blue cloak, took out a map from his arms, and threw it on the ground. He sneered and said, "What do you think?" The moment the map fell to the ground, everyone's pupils shrank and suddenly widened. The peak. Chapter 16:14. The moment the map fell to the ground, everyone saw the shadow of a red building appear on top of the map. Wasn't this the map they had been looking for? Why did someone else have a copy as well? How can this be? Ghost Saint King took out the map, his eyes filled with disbelief. After carefully comparing the 2 maps and confirming that they were exactly the same, his heart was filled with doubt. Secondary Saint King's face was also a little ugly. He originally thought that he was the only one who knew this secret, but now it seemed that wasn't the case. "Where did you get this map?" Secondary Saint King asked coldly. "Hee." The middle-aged man in a fiery red dragon robe quietly released his aura. "Spiritual Saint King, yet another second-grade holy dynasty. Do I need to tell you where we got it? You overestimate yourself. Also, you can't take this treasure for yourself." The middle-aged man in the fiery red dragon robe came to secondary Saint King's side, full of hostility. Seeing this scene, Yi Hao and the other 2 simultaneously looked at Confucian Saint King. Confucian Saint King shrugged helplessly and said, "I don't know what's going on either. Back then, I coincidentally saved an old man, and then that old man gave this map to me. It's that simple." Yi Hao began to doubt the authenticity of the Qianshan treasure. However, since the system had issued this mission, it meant that the Qianshan treasure still existed. "Why do I feel that something is wrong? Why are there 2 maps?" Ju Yu was puzzled. It was reasonable to say that the fewer people who knew about such a precious thing, the better. "Hey, what are the 4 of you waiting for? Hurry up and open the door." Ghost Saint King was shocked, but he didn't forget to urge Yi Hao and the other 3. Yi Hao took a deep breath and smiled faintly. "Don't think so much. We'll deal with it when the time comes. It's no big deal." Then, the 4 continued to study the way to open the door. The people from the 2 second-grade sacred dynasties stood quietly behind them, waiting for them to crack this strange door. Qianyuan Sacred Dynasty, Qianyuan New City. In the main hall, Hu Sanyang and the other 4 were discussing the reconstruction of Qianyuan New City. Suddenly, a guard hurriedly ran in. Qing Yunji waved his hand and said softly, "What happened? Why are you panicking?" "Not good. The ancient sacred dynasty's army is here." "What?" Hearing this, the 5 were shocked. They had just ascended not long ago, so how could the ancient sacred dynasty's army be here so quickly? Although half of the people in the Qianyuan Holy Dynasty knew that Yi Hao was Jiyu Luo's disciple, they had kept the news a secret. How could the people of the Jiyu Luo Holy Dynasty know about it? How many people? What's the cultivation base of the leader? Jin Sheng hurriedly asked after a trace of panic flashed through his heart. The guard replied, "I only know that there are 10,000 people, and their cultivations are not low either. They are all at the high level of Spirit Heaven Emperor, and we can't see the cultivation of the leader." After the army entered the Sky Origin realm, they did not stop, but headed straight for the new Qianyuan city. "Yes." After the guard left, the main hall fell into a dead silence. Qing Yunji slowly paced around the hall and made a preliminary calculation. If there are 10,000 high-level Spirit Heavenly Emperor cultivators, then I guess the leader is most likely the Spirit Saint King, and among these 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Emperor cultivators, there are definitely Saint King experts. If that's the case, Tian Yuan is in danger. Ai. Jin Sheng sighed and said, I didn't expect trouble to come so quickly. This has messed up our original plan. There's no point in wallowing in self-pity now. We should take some countermeasures. I'm willing to listen to Sanyang's orders. Sanyang glanced at the heaven-devouring beast that was sleeping soundly on her shoulder and said, Spirit Saint King, don't worry. We have the heaven-devouring beast, and the Spirit Heaven Emperor cultivators don't have to worry either. With the Great Nation Protection Formation, they won't be able to enter. If the Spirit Saint King breaks the nation protecting Grand Formation, then we'll be at their mercy. So we have to do something. Shin, evacuate the citizens and let them take refuge in the surrounding cities. Since the ancient Luo Holy Dynasty is here for Tianyuan New City, they won't make things difficult for the citizens. Yi, go check on the various resources in Tianyuan New City. Make sure we have enough resources for war. Lord Jin, you're more skilled in formations and alchemy. I'll have to trouble you to set up a formation in Tianyuan New City and supervise everyone's alchemy. Lord Qing, you're the strongest among us, so I'll have to trouble you to gather all the high-level spirit heavenly emperors in the city. Remember, only high-level spirit heavenly emperors are needed. We don't need anyone else. We need people who can fight, not cannon fodder. Yes. The four of them accepted the order and left. After doing all this, Sanyang let out a sigh of relief. Suddenly, heaven-devouring beast, who was lying on her shoulder, woke up and said, I didn't expect a woman like you to be so decisive. You don't hesitate at all. You're much bolder than some men. I can't help it. I've seen this kind of thing many times. Naturally, I'm used to it. It's also thanks to people like you in Tianyuan New City. Otherwise, how would that guy dare to go out and look for opportunities when the situation is unstable? I'm just doing my best. Compared to the young emperor, I'm still lacking. The burden on his shoulders is heavier than any of us. Sanyang's face suddenly revealed a sorrowful expression. Heaven-devouring beast laughed, You're always speaking up for him. Don't tell me you've fallen for him. At this time, Sanyang fell silent and did not reply. After a long time, heaven-devouring beast jumped down from his shoulder to the ground and said lazily, Fine, since this is the last thing I promised that guy, I might as well do it beautifully. Leave all the Saint King stage experts of the ancient fallen holy dynasty to me. You can lead your men to resist those spirit heaven emperor stage cultivators. Leave them all to you. Sanyang's eyes revealed deep worry. There's also a spirit heavenly emperor on the other side. Doing this will put you in danger. You're quite a kind girl. Heaven-devouring beast continued, Don't worry, I can hold on. It's just a spirit heavenly emperor and a dozen small fries. This saint can beat them down with one hand. Sanyang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Heaven-devouring beast said with a serious face, Don't doubt me. How do you know that a spirit heavenly emperor is my true strength and not what I want you to see and know? Peek. Chapter 16:15. Sanyang was slightly taken aback. This heaven-devouring sacred beast was hiding its true strength. Looking at Sanyang's stunned expression, heaven-devouring sacred beast said earnestly, In this world, not everything that you want to see is real. It could be something that others want you to see. Do you understand? Sanyang nodded as if she did not fully understand. Heaven-devouring sacred beast felt as if it was playing the lute to a cow and did not say anything else. Sanyang did not ask any further. At least for now, Tian Yuan's life was not in danger. Dusk Holy Dynasty, ruins. Yi Hao carefully touched the vermilion door and suddenly felt a protrusion. He touched it carefully and felt that there was a word carved on it. Yi Hao told the others about this discovery and they also carefully touched the door. Not long after, they found the 4 small bumps on the door. The 4 of them put the words they had discovered together and formed the words, break, with, strength, strength. According to the literal meaning, it was obviously to break through the door and enter. Did the 4 of you break through this door or not? The one wearing the red dragon robe was the ruler of the Fire Beacon Holy Dynasty, the Flame Holy King. He had always had a fiery temper and when he saw that Yi Hao and the others were hesitating, his eyes burned with anger. Yi Hao smiled and said, The four of us have cracked the secret of this door, but we can't open it. It says to break through with force, and our cultivation is far from enough. Break through with force. Isn't that simple? Flashcard. The Flame Saint King bellowed. Rings of flames appeared around his body as his face turned crimson red. Seeing this, Yi Hao and the others immediately retreated to the side. Roar. Open. A gigantic fireball quietly took shape and slammed heavily against the vermilion door. The moment the fireball hit, the vermilion door emitted a faint light, and then the gigantic fireball disappeared. It was as if it had been swallowed by the vermilion door. The Flame Holy King frowned slightly. What was this? Just as everyone was puzzled, a fist-sized fireball suddenly flew out from the door. This fireball was more than 10 times smaller than the one that the Flame Holy King had thrown out. Bang! Before the fireball could reach the Flame Holy King, it was frozen in mid-air by a wall of ice that suddenly appeared on the ground and shattered into pieces. Beside the Flame Saint King, a young man in snow-white ice robes suddenly appeared and said, "There's something strange about this door. Let's attack together." All right. Flame Saint King and the green-robed man attacked at the same time. This time, it was a fireball surrounded by circles of ice blades. It carried the power of a Spirit Saint King as it heavily bombarded the vermilion door. Just like the last time, it quietly disappeared and quietly reappeared, but its size had shrunk several times. At this time, the second Sage King sneered and said, "What's with the two Sage Kings? Why was his attack so weak? Don't tell me you didn't eat before you came." The Flame Saint King had always disliked the person beside him who spoke in an eccentric manner. Slightly angered, he said, "Come at me if you have the ability. Don't act like you're very powerful. We're both Saint Kings of the spirit realm, so who's more powerful than the other?" Me. The second Sage King snorted coldly, obviously disagreeing with what the Flame Saint King had just said. Circulating spiritual energy in his hands, his figure moved lightly. With a step forward, he directly appeared in front of the vermilion door. Then, he lightly patted the vermilion door with his palm. Creak. The door quietly cracked open a crack. The second Sage King's face was filled with pride. But before he could say anything, he suddenly felt a strong wave of energy coming from the door. Then, he was forced to retreat dozens of steps before he could stop himself. Ha ha ha. The Flame Saint King held his stomach and laughed. "I thought our second Sage King was very powerful. But he's just a weakling." The second Sage King was so angry that his face turned green. At this time, Yi Hao stood out and said, "If you still want to go in, then attack together. Use all your attacks, don't leave any room for maneuver." After saying that, a fiery red sword appeared in Yi Hao's hand. Yi Hao took the lead and attacked the vermilion door. Then, it was Ju Yu and the other two. Each of them circulated their spiritual energy and attacked the door. Although the cultivation of the four people was not high in the eyes of these Saint Kings, their enthusiasm still had some effect. Everyone had their own little calculations and attacked the vermilion door together. Boom, boom, boom. Just like that, the vermilion door endured one attack after another. Not long after, the door that was emitting a demonic red light was already full of holes. After it endured the attacks that it should not have endured at this time, the door finally collapsed with a loud crash. But the palace was completely dark, and nothing could be seen. At this time, the second Sage King quietly came behind Yi Hao and the other three. He circulated his spiritual energy and directly pushed the four of them into the darkness. He even whispered in their ears, "It's time for you to perform, cannon fodder." The four of them were wrapped up by the Spirit Saint King's spiritual energy and directly thrown into the Red Palace. The Flame Saint King looked at this scene and said, "That's your biological brother. You can really do it. As expected of an unfilial son who killed his father to get to the top. This is my family's matter. What does it have to do with you?" The second Sage King looked impatient. The two people who were about to quarrel were instantly attracted by the waves of screams coming from the palace. Two groups of people rushed into the palace at the same time. Just after the two groups of people left, a burly middle-aged man with a cold face appeared in front of the Red Palace. Behind him was a group of soldiers. As far as the eye could see, These soldiers were all cultivators of the Spirit Saint King realm. They were all wearing golden armor and golden scimitars. On the armor on their chests, there was a large GU character engraved on it. He had been here for a long time and could be said to have witnessed the entire process. He only appeared after these people had all entered. Naturally, he had something very important to do. At this moment, the corner of his mouth was slightly curled up in a cold smile. With a wave of his hand, he led the 20 little Spirit Saint King realm cultivators in a line. Sunset Dynasty, in a secret room in the palace. The adoptive father of the ruler of the Sunset Dynasty sat on a praying mat with a smile on his face. There was a faint red light around him. There were fireballs, ice blades, palm prints, sword lights, and other attacks filled with spiritual energy floating around him. The old man stretched out his hand and casually grabbed a fireball. He opened his mouth and directly swallowed the fireball into his stomach. After a burp, his cultivation actually increased slightly. The attacks of a Spirit Saint King are really delicious. It's much easier than cultivating bitterly. Unfortunately, this is all that's left. However, they should have already entered the palace. I hope they like the gifts I prepared for them. Ha ha ha. After laughing, he took an ice blade and directly threw it into his mouth like eating an orange. After chewing twice, he swallowed it into his stomach. His cultivation increased slightly again. Chapter 16:16. Just as the old man was eating heartily, a young man in a dragon robe with stubble appeared in the secret chamber. What's the matter? The old man took another ice blade and threw it into his mouth. He muttered, Ice Saint King's ice blade is really good. I should capture him and get more ice blades to relieve the heat. The young man seemed to be used to this scene. If Ice Saint King, who was in the ruined land, knew about this, he would be so angry that his nose would be crooked. Father, I've just received news that the ancient Holy Dynasty has sent a team of 10,000 people to Tianyuan New City. They are now less than 100 miles away from Tianyuan New City. What should we do? So soon? The old man was shocked. He said doubtfully, that's not right. Why would the ancient Holy Dynasty attack Tianyuan so soon? This is not what we expected. Yes, I was also confused. I asked around and found out that the Kang'er Empire's imperial uncle Kang and his son Kangju had gone to the ancient Holy Dynasty. They are also part of the expedition. Those two bastards have ruined my plan. The old man snorted angrily. He took an ice blade and broke it in half. He put it in his mouth and chewed slowly. Father, what should we do next? Should we help them? No, the ancient Holy Dynasty has nothing to do with Tianyuan. If we act rashly, it will arouse suspicion. Can we send someone to help them secretly? The old man's eyes narrowed. He asked, who is the leader of the 10,000 people team? Father, it's Guu. Although the young man was the ruler of the ancient Holy Dynasty, he was still very respectful to the old man who had helped him to the throne step by step. Guu, the Holy King of the Spirits. The ancient Holy Dynasty wants to destroy the entire Tianyuan continent. If that's the case, the 10,000-man team is the language camp under Guu's banner. That's right. The language battalion is one of the ancient dynasty's elite troops. There are 10 spirit minor holy kings, and they're helping us from the shadows. How can they help secretly? If he were to help, he would definitely expose his identity. However, there are only a few saint kings in the ancient demon realm. How could Guu not recognize him? So you're saying that you'll just watch from the sidelines and won't interfere? Now that things have come to this, we can only do this. The old man took a fiery red sword light and placed it in his mouth. It was a familiar taste. Won't this affect our plan? There will definitely be an impact, but it depends on whether it's a good or a bad one. The old man slowly pondered. Now that I think about it, the destruction of Tianyuan isn't a bad thing. At the very least, it can deepen his hatred for Guu Luo, and make his desire for revenge stronger. Yes, I understand. All right. The old man looked at the leader of the Sunset Holy Dynasty whom he had personally trained with satisfaction. How's the Chenshan treasure? Reporting to foster father, Everything is going according to plan. I believe that it won't be long before it comes to fruition according to foster father's plan. Very good. After that, the father and son chatted for a while, and the leader of the Sunset Holy Dynasty left, leaving this small world to his foster father to enjoy the hard-earned delicacies. In the ruins, in the Red Palace, the people of the 2 second-grade holy dynasties rushed in after hearing the screams. They looked around at the pitch-black surroundings and couldn't help but shiver. Suddenly, a fiery red light lit up in front of them. It turned out that the Flame Saint King was holding a fireball in his hand to light up the place. Actually, with their Saint King's cultivation, it wasn't a problem for them to see at night. However, for some reason, they couldn't see anything after entering this place. Helpless, the Flame Saint King could only take out a fireball to light up the place. Where are those 4 fellows? Didn't we hear the screams? What happened just now? Why didn't we see them? They couldn't have encountered some danger, right? That's for sure. Look at their cultivation. 2 Saint Kings and 2 Spirit Heaven Emperors. They aren't very strong, so it's natural that they would encounter some danger. Ah, help. Suddenly, cries for help came from the front. In front, the Flame Saint King with the fireball moved first. Then, everyone saw that the fireball was constantly moving, so they hurriedly followed. They couldn't see anything in this palace, so they might as well follow the group to avoid getting separated. Soon, everyone saw a bright light in front of them, and they rushed over without hesitation. Stepping into the light, they were greeted by a roar. The roar came from the deepest part of the palace. Wow, this is the Chenshan treasure. We're rich now. With these treasures, it's enough for us to grow stronger. That's right. Let's take the treasures before they come over. Wait. What is this? Run. Roar. First, there was a joyful voice, then the joy turned into panic, and panic turned into fear. In the end, there was only a low roar, and then there was silence. The Flame Saint King and the Quasi-Saint King frowned at the same time. Chenshan treasure? Then, they took a step forward and rushed in front of everyone. The Ice Saint King and the Linyi Saintess brought their own people and followed closely behind the two. Not long after, everyone came to the depths of the palace, but what welcomed them was the fierce roar of a demonic beast. Roar. The demonic beast only roared, but the people with lower cultivation couldn't take it. They held their heads in pain and knelt on the ground. At the front of the crowd, the 2 people with the highest cultivation in this group stared at the scarlet-eyed demonic spider that had 18 arms and was as big as the 2 of them. This is the 16 demonic spider. The Ice Saint King's face was a little ugly. He had only seen such a huge demonic spider with so many arms in ancient books. Looking at the demonic spider's cultivation, it should be at the Spirit Saint King realm. You ignorant humans, you disturbed this saint's sleep. Do you know your mistake? The demonic spider looked at the dozens of people who suddenly broke in and couldn't help but look angry and speak human language. The Linyi Saintess observed the traces of fighting around at this moment, so she was sure that the Confucian Saint King and the other 3 were swallowed by the demonic spider. She asked, the 4 people who just came in, were they eaten by you? What human? This sage has never seen him before. The demonic spider said impatiently as it lay on the huge red spiderweb that it had woven. That's not important. Where is the Chenshan treasure? The Quasi-Saint King's face was cold as he stared at the mountain wall behind the red demonic spider. There was a key that was shining with golden light. Presumably, the Chenshan treasure was behind the stone door made of the mountain wall. Chapter 16-17. The demon spider lying flat on the red spider web saw these rude people who suddenly broke in and greedily looked at the mountain wall behind it. It could not help but become furious. Hidden in the mountain wall behind him were the treasures he had accumulated over the past hundreds of years. They were his treasures. Were these people eyeing its treasures? Unforgivable. Roar, how did you get in? The demon spider's 16 arms moved slowly as it asked. Looking at you, the 1,000 mountain treasure is behind you, and you must be the guardian beast of the 1,000 mountain treasure. The Quasi-Saint King looked past the demon spider and stared at the smooth mountain wall behind it. What treasure? What guardian beast? This is my territory, trespassers will die. Why are you talking so much nonsense with a beast? Just kill it. As for the treasure behind it, it's naturally first come first serve. The Flame Saint King laughed sinisterly and rushed forward, his fists containing supreme power. H, so you're a 9th level Saint King, no wonder you're so confident. Take this. The demon spider snorted and spat out strands of spiderweb from its mouth. The Flame Saint King sneered and dodged continuously. The dozens of spider web did not even touch the corner of his clothes. If that's all you've got, you'd better get out of the way. The 1,000 mountain treasure is not something you can protect. The Flame Saint King put his palms together and separated them, a ball of fire burning in each of his palms. Ha ha ha, foolish human, look at your feet. Hearing that, the Flame Saint King's body trembled. His feet were entangled by some red spiderweb, and his feet seemed to be fixed to the ground, unable to move. What's going on? I clearly dodged it. At this moment, he noticed from the corner of his eyes that the red spiderweb that he dodged was slowly moving, and they were moving in the opposite direction of where the Flame Saint King was standing. I see. The Flame Saint King instantly understood why his feet were entangled. He exerted force in his legs, wanting to break free, but unexpectedly, 2 strands of spider web flew over. Plop, one strand of spider web landed on the Flame Saint King's arm, and the other strand landed on the mountain wall nearby. Just like that, the Flame Saint King's 4 limbs were bound, like an insect welcoming death. Idiot, I don't know how many Saint Kings have died in the hands of my spider silk. You actually dare to look down on me, I don't know who gave you the courage. It opened its mouth wide, and this time, it wasn't spider silk, but a ball of scarlet flames. Boom! A tall ice wall drilled out of the ground for no reason. 2 white swordlights flashed and the Flame Holy King's 4 limbs were saved. The sound of footsteps thundered. The cultivators who had been standing there watching the show suddenly swarmed forward, heading straight for the 16 demonic spiders. The Flame Saint King cast a grateful look at the young man standing in front of him. The young man retracted the ice wall and said, "It's been confirmed. This demon spider has reached the 10th level of the Holy King. It's only 1 step away from the Supreme Holy King. If you don't want to die, let's attack together." Whoosh! Ear-piercing sounds could be heard everywhere. The Flame Sage King clenched his fists and laughed loudly. "Little demonic spider, I'll let you have a taste of this sage's final flame fist." Roar! The 16 demonic spiders looked at the human cultivators swarming forward and growled. "Are you trying to bully me with numbers? Then this sage will let you know what despair is. My little darlings, come out and play with these idiots." Suddenly, the abdomen of the 16 demonic spiders split open. Then, countless fist-sized half-black half-red demonic spiders crawled out. Most of the demonic spiders were in the Spirit Heaven Emperor realm. Under the lead of a few Saint King realm demonic spiders, they charged towards the greedy human cultivators. The 2 groups of people instantly clashed, blood splattering everywhere. There was demonic beast blood in the blood, so naturally, there was also human blood. Not far from this battlefield, there was a burst of obscure spiritual energy fluctuation in the void. If someone looked over at this moment, they would definitely find some clues, because there were still 4 figures hidden in the void. These 4 figures were Yi Hao and the other 3 who had been pushed in first. Yi Hao had long felt that something was wrong here, so he was very cautious when he came in. When he saw the 10th level Saint King realm demonic spider, he immediately prepared to escape. In the end, Juyu came up with a plan. He used the terrifying screams to attract the people at the door. He let them fight with the demonic spiders, and when both sides were injured, the 4 of them would come out to clean up the mess. Yi Hao's crimson eyes stared at the key that was shining with a golden light. He asked doubtfully, "Is that the Qianshan treasure? It doesn't look like much." The Confucian sage king knew a little about the origin of the 1,000 mountain treasure and couldn't help but say, "This 1,000 mountain treasure is actually an unmarked graveyard. The ancient demon realm has been in constant war for hundreds of years, and there were friction between the sacred dynasties and the sacred dynasties. Then a group of ghost troops appeared out of nowhere. They never killed or hurt people. They called themselves the corpse movers and said that they would properly dispose of these corpses. The ghost troops moved those who died in the battle to a mysterious place. Many of the dead were either spirit emperor or saint king when they were alive. If one person's wealth is not considerable, then what about the accumulated wealth of the cultivators who died in the past hundreds of years? Think about it, how much wealth that is. No one knows where the ghost troops are stationed, and the place where they buried the treasure is even more unknown. I also got a map by chance and found out that the Thousand Mountain treasure is in these ruins. So the so-called Thousand Mountain treasure is the wealth of the dead. Juyu muttered to himself. He felt that it was a little unbelievable, but then he felt relieved. No. Yi Hao shook his head, feeling that something was wrong. I'm still confused. Why are there 2 copies of the map? I have a feeling that someone deliberately leaked the location of the treasure. Then what is their purpose? Juyu also felt that something was wrong. If this was a trap set by a certain faction, then what was the purpose of tricking the leaders of the first and second sacred dynasties into coming here? Suddenly, Yi Hao's face changed slightly, and he transmitted his voice to the 3 people around him. Sure, don't talk, don't transmit your voice. Someone is coming. The 4 of them immediately shut their mouths and concealed their auras at the same time, hiding in the void. Not long after, a group of people appeared in front of them. The leader was a tall man with a cold face. Behind him were 20 people in golden armor, and they were all spirit little saint kings. Yi Hao looked at the armor in front of their chest and saw the word ancient on it. Ancient fallen sacred dynasty? Such a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Could it be that the ancient fallen sacred dynasty also knew about the treasure? Chapter 1618. It was not that Yi Hao was blindly guessing, but other than a third-rank sacred dynasty, who else could produce such a lineup? And the word ancient on the armor clearly pointed to the ancient fallen sacred dynasty of the 4 third-rank sacred dynasties. The corner of the Confucian saint king's mouth moved slightly, and he wanted to say something. Yi Hao hurriedly stopped him. At this time, the cold-faced man who was walking suddenly raised his head, and a pair of black eyes kept spinning in the void. After confirming that there was nothing unusual, he slowly left with the 20 spiritual saint kings behind him. However, they did not directly join the battle, but chose to sit on the mountain and reap the benefits like Yi Hao and the others. Yi Hao and the other 3 heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. At this time, they were already dead in the eyes of the quasi-saint king and the others. Exposing themselves now was not a clear choice. In the deepest part of the palace, the 16 demonic spiders looked at the flustered cultivators and could not help but laugh. You want to bully me with numbers? What a joke. After saying that, it closed its abdomen, and no more spiders ran out. It had already released more than 10,000 spiders, and these spiders alone were enough to make these people suffer. Then, a vast spiritual energy suddenly surged from all directions toward the 16 demonic spiders' heads. Gradually, a silver-white mark lit up on the spiders' foreheads, which was a sign that they were about to break through. Not good, we can't let this beast break through to the spiritual Saint King realm, or else, we will die. The quasi-Saint King's face was cold. He was also a 9th-level spiritual Saint King like the Flame Saint King. He could not defeat the 16 demonic spiders alone, so he wanted to join forces with the other 3 spiritual Saint Kings to deal a fatal blow to the spiders that were trying to break through. Rings of fire flashed around the Flame Saint King, and then a long staff made of spiritual energy covered in flames appeared in his hand. The Ice Saint King waved his hands lightly, and 2 ice blades appeared in his hands. He cut down the small spiders one by one, and pointed the cold blades at the 16 demonic spiders. The Saintess of Leni pulled out a fiery red ribbon expressionlessly. As the ribbon spun, it spewed out white flames, and the small demonic spiders that were wandering on the ground died instantly. The 4 great Saint Kings practically moved at the same time. Facing the 16 demonic spiders that were on the verge of breaking through, each of them offered their own attacks. As if premeditated, when the 4 Saint Kings rushed forward, the remaining 30 Spirit Saint Kings stood in a straight line with their backs facing the 4 Saint Kings under the leadership of the Ghost Saint King, blocking all the demon spiders that wanted to rush forward. There was a clear distinction. In front of the straight line was the battle between the little spirit saint king and the little demonic spider. Behind them was the battle between the 4 great saint kings and the 16 demonic spiders. The 16 demonic spider that was forcefully breaking through felt 4 strong auras locking onto it. It suddenly opened its scarlet eyes. Facing the 2 ice blades that had arrived in front of it, it directly pulled out 2 of its arms, 1 in each hand, and held the 2 ice blades that exuded a cold aura. Scram! He then pulled out 2 more arms and slammed them into Ice Holy King's chest. Just as Ice Saint King was sent flying, 2 figures appeared in front of the 16 demonic spiders. A white long sword and a fiery red long stick. Almost at the same time, the 16 demonic spiders' 2 middle arms were pinned to the smooth mountain wall behind them. Then, a red figure flashed, a red ribbon wrapped around the 2 ice blades that the 16 demonic spiders had just thrown away, and directly pierced into the mountain wall behind them. The 16 demonic spiders' face was filled with joy, but in the next second, he fell into a rage. Because the 4 great saint kings attacked together again, not only that, but also used red ribbons to tie 4 of his arms to the ice blades. Now, 6 of his 16 arms were broken. The 4 great saint kings each stood still, and the spiritual energy fluctuations on their bodies showed that they were 9th level spirit saint kings. No wonder the 16 demonic spider was so anxious and wanted to break through immediately. Even if he was a 10th level spirit saint king, he would not be able to withstand the siege of 4 9th level spirit saint kings. Moreover, he could not move his body, so he had to stay where he was. The 16 demonic spider was furious, and growled, "You bunch of rascals, when this saint breaks through to spirit saint king, you will all die." The 16 demonic spider's body glowed red, and the mark on his forehead became brighter and brighter. "Ignore him, kill him before he breaks through. After killing him, we will divide the treasures equally." "That's fine, I agree. I can accept the equal division." The 4 of them surprisingly reached an agreement. Before the enemy was defeated, they had already thought of how to divide the treasures. This was not giving the 16 demonic spider any face. However, at this moment, the 16 demonic spider was obviously more concerned about his life. Face was not important anymore. If it were not for the fact that the 16 demonic spider could not leave the mountain wall, his strength would have been stronger. No matter what, he would not have been pressed against the wall by the 4 great saint kings. On the other side, the spirit saint kings were worthy of being the rulers of the various first-grade holy dynasties. After the initial panic, they had regained their composure and stood firm. There were very few casualties. On the other hand, the fierce demonic spider only had a third of its body left, and the ground was littered with the corpses of its companions. This did not affect the little demonic spiders that ran out of the 16 demonic spiders' stomach at all. One after another, they rushed fearlessly towards the human wall that could not be broken through. Rumble. The 16 demonic spider was in danger. It was showing signs of defeat. Ice Saint King shouted coldly and rushed towards the remaining 8 arms of the 16 demonic spider with 16 ice blades. The 16 demonic spider was very angry. He had been living here, but today, a group of people suddenly rushed in and indiscriminately wanted to kill him. Moreover, these people relied on their numbers and kept pushing him against the wall, causing his hope of becoming a spirit saint king to become more and more uncertain. Thus, he did not want to hide anymore. He opened his mouth and spat out a cloud of black mist. Ice Saint King did not even look at it. He directly blocked in front of him with an ice wall. Bang! Suddenly, a bolt of lightning came out of nowhere. It easily pierced through the ice wall and hit Ice Holy King in the chest. Ice Saint King was sent flying. 16 ice blades were stabbed in different places. Ice Saint King looked at the bowl-sized wound on his chest. He channeled spiritual energy in his hands, wanting to heal the wound. However, he found that spiritual energy was useless. The wound caused by the lightning could not be healed. Feeling the pain that he had not felt in a long time, Ice Saint King's killing intent soared to the sky. The other 3 Saint Kings looked at the cloud of black mist in the air vigilantly. The black mist dissipated, and a 7-colored gourd appeared in front of everyone's eyes. That is, Quasi-Saint King looked at the 7-colored gourd. His greed became more and more obvious. 9th level spiritual weapon. There were not more than a handful of such holy items in the entire ancient demon realm. Who would have thought that the demonic beast guarding the treasure would have one? Then, the item in the Thousand Mountains treasure, top point. Chapter 1619. The 16 demonic spider looked at Ice Saint King, who was still lying on the ground, and sneered. Hee, you don't take my 5 thunder gourd seriously. This is a level 9 spiritual weapon that I've nurtured for hundreds of years. How can a mere ice wall block it? Ice Saint King's face was ashen. At this time, the spirit Saint Kings who had finished off the little demonic spider had all rushed over. 2 of them came to Ice Saint King's side and helped him up. Ice Saint King looked at the lightning wrapped around his chest and reminded them, be careful, don't get hit by the lightning in the gourd. The wounds caused by the lightning won't heal in a short time. Hearing this, the greedy eyes of the other 3 Saint Kings slowly dissipated, and they slowly regained their calmness. At their level, as long as the injuries were not serious, they could heal on their own. They didn't expect the attack from the gourd to be so overbearing that it actually blocked the vitality of their wounds. This demonic spider actually has a level 9 spiritual weapon. I'm really curious about what's behind this mountain wall. That's right. Fellow Saint Kings, this demonic spider looks like he can't hold on any longer. Let's kill him and go in together. Agreed, but we still have to defend this level 9 spiritual weapon well. Before one of the 20 spirit Saint Kings could finish his sentence, he was directly pushed by a huge suction force toward the 16 demonic spider. The 16 demonic spider's spiritual energy shot out, and the 5 thunder gourd's mouth had lightning floating out. Then, a bolt of purple lightning struck the spirit Saint King's chest at lightning speed. Ah! With a scream, the spirit Saint King died on the spot. When the others looked at Quasi Saint King again, there was a trace of fear in their eyes. Because that person was pushed forward by Quasi Saint King, who knew if they would be the next one. However, Quasi Saint King didn't have the time to care about these spirit Saint Kings who weren't high in cultivation. When the purple lightning struck, he attacked the 16 demonic spider with his white sword. A level 9 spiritual weapon was very powerful, but it also needed time to activate. He had just released a bolt of purple lightning, and he was confident that he could rush to the 16 demonic spider before the next bolt of purple lightning struck. At the same time, the Flame Saint King and the Saintess of Leni also acted. The 16 demonic spider looked at the 3 figures that were getting closer and closer to it. The spiritual power around its body surged, and the electric arcs of the 5 thunder gourd rolled, as if it was preparing a powerful attack. Unfortunately, the 3 great Saint Kings were not prepared to give them this chance. A white sword light directly pierced through the hard scales of the 16 demonic spiders, piercing into the abdomens of many small demonic spiders that had just been released. 2 fiery fists directly hit the 16 demon spiders' forehead, igniting white smoke. At the same time, a painful cry rang out. In the end, 2 slender palms hit the rest of the 16 demonic spiders' body at lightning speed. Then, a cracking sound came from the 16 demonic spiders' body. The 3 of them withdrew their hands at the same time, and black blood that emitted a foul stench flowed wantonly on the ground. The 16 demonic spider's body began to disintegrate. Before it disintegrated, it glanced at the demons who had killed it with deep hatred. With the disintegration of the 16 demonic spiders, the 5 thunder gourd in the air quietly withdrew the rolling electric arcs at the mouth of the gourd. It quietly withdrew all the anomalies and floated in the air, looking no different from an ordinary wine gourd. Finally, the demonic beast guarding the Thousand Mountains treasure was dead. The 3 of them looked at the 5 thunder gourd in the air at the same time. Whoosh! A burst of sound came from beside them, and then they saw a white figure rushing to the smooth mountain wall with the golden key inserted in it. The other 3 were unwilling to be left behind. They temporarily gave up the idea of collecting the 5 thunder gourd and rushed to the mountain wall. When the other spirit Saint Kings saw this, they steeled their hearts and rushed over there. Birds die for food and men die for wealth. The treasure was right in front of them, let's take a gamble. Thus, the 9th grade spiritual weapon suspended in the air was abandoned just like that. Just as everyone rushed to the mountain wall, Yi Hao and the other three hiding in the void clearly saw that the group with the word GU engraved on their chests no longer hid themselves. Instead, they openly appeared in the hall. Because the four great Saint Kings and the others were all focused on the Thousand Mountains treasure, they did not notice that there was such a group behind them. Ice Saint King was the first to arrive at the smooth mountain wall. He looked at the shining golden key and did not hesitate to turn it to the right. Rumble. As Ice Saint King turned the key to the far right, the smooth mountain wall suddenly moved to the right. When the dodge opened to allow one person to pass through, Ice Saint King rushed in without hesitation. Not long after he entered, a blue figure also rushed in, followed by two red figures, and then the other Spirit Saint Kings. This is the Thousand Mountains treasure. Ahaha, the treasures here are really rich. With these things, our empires can take advantage of the situation and rise up. We don't have to be afraid of those third-grade sacred dynasties anymore. What is this? Not good. It's the 1,000-year miasma. After inhaling it, you will temporarily lose your spiritual power. Why is this thing here? At this time, the tall man with a cold expression had already led the people behind him to stand quietly in front of the mountain wall. It looked like they were waiting for the people inside to come out. Not long after, there was a coughing sound from inside. Then, people kept running out and falling to the ground. Then, they saw the cold man standing in front of the mountain wall and were shocked. Isn't this someone from the ancient fallen sacred dynasty? Why is he here? Could it be? The four great Saint Kings also stumbled as they retreated. The quasi-Saint King leaned against the mountain wall and looked at the cold man with shock in his eyes. Gu Feng? Why are you here? The Flame Saint King said coldly, What? Even your third-grade holy dynasty is interested in it. Ice Saint King was a little dissatisfied. Your ancient fallen sacred dynasty is the strongest among the third-grade sacred dynasties. Why would you want this treasure? The Lin Yi holy maiden sat quietly on the ground and adjusted her breathing. Now that everyone had temporarily lost their cultivation, and a 10th order Spirit Saint King and 20 high-level Spirit Saint Kings had suddenly appeared, it was not a good thing for them. Gu Feng stood with his hands behind his back. His expression was still cold as he said indifferently, Everyone, are you satisfied with the big gift that our ancient fallen sacred dynasty has prepared for you? Prepared a big gift? What did he mean? Could it be that this Thousand Mountains treasure was the work of the ancient fallen sacred dynasty? Was this a trap set up by the ancient fallen sacred dynasty? Hearing Gu Feng's words, Yi Hao's doubts were finally answered. Ever since the two maps appeared, he felt that there was something wrong with this Thousand Mountains treasure. Now, it seemed like the ancient fallen sacred dynasty had set up this trap. As for their goal, it was definitely to subdue the other sacred dynasties. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.